Fujifilm X-H2 versus Fujifilm X-H2S. The photographer camera versus the videographer camera. What to choose between 40 megapixel sensor with sharpness with good AF versus a 26 megapixel sensor with better AF and better video specs. What is the right camera for you? Let me share with you my personal choice regarding these two cameras. Hi there and welcome to Tudor Talks. My name is Tudor Matescu and in this video I want to share with you from my experience as a YouTuber, as a vlogger, as a small videographer, as a passionate photographer, what camera would I choose between Fujifilm X-H2 and X-H2S, having in mind that now I am filming on my Sony a7R III with 42 megapixel sensor, a full frame camera. And I also have Fujifilm X-C4 and Fujifilm X Pro 3 and Fujifilm X100V and Micro Four Thirds cameras. So I have huge experience in using all these cameras over several years in photography but also in videography. And last night I was thinking what camera from X-H2 and X-H2S I would choose. What camera I would choose now? If I would be a beginner, what my advice I would give to me now to choose between these two cameras. So I want to share with you my advices regarding the choosing of these two cameras and thinking about the marketing of these two cameras. So X-H2, it is marketed as a photographer camera, but it doesn't have an articulated screen. It also have a flip out screen. X-H2S is marketed as a vlogging or as a videographer camera and lesser as a photographer camera, but it's having better AF. So it's very hard to decide. So let's start with the first point. The X-H2 has 40 megapixels. Do you really need so much resolution? Well, I thought yes, I need it because it's fun to have resolution. You really have tonality and you really have good image quality when you have a 40 megapixel sensor. And I'm talking from experience, how I've said, because I am using and I've used Sony a7R III for street photography, for paid event photography, for portraits. So I know what a good sensor with lots of resolution can do for a photography. The image quality is great, But now after any year, I'm really regretting that I have such a huge sensor. I'm really regretting it. I really don't need, as a photographer, as a paid event photographer, as a portrait shoot photographer that I'm doing portraits, I really don't need so much megapixels. I have a very good computer and it's struggling with the processing of these files, and also these big files need to be backed up, and all this space and all this resolution and all these goodies, it's failing. When I'm editing a 26 megapixel sensor, I am it's okay, the sharpness is there, and I've also edited Sony a7C pictures and Sony a7 III raw files. So I've edited the 26 megapixel raw files from full frame cameras, from APS-C Fujifilm cameras and so on. And yes, I really do feel that they are behind a sharper sensor. Yes, they are behind, but not by much. When you are sharing your work online via Google Photos or via Flickr or other sharing services, you will lose the advantage that the big sensor will offer you. So in the end, if I'm not printing billboards, if I'm not pixel peeping with my clients, the big advantage, personally, I don't feel it. Again, for portrait photography, for human photography, not for landscapes. If you are doing landscapes, probably that would be another talk. But for general photography purposes, even for product photography, I really don't like the 40 megapixels sensor. I don't say I don't like it as image quality. The image quality is great, but the process, all this, it's cumbersome because we are getting now to the next part. A bigger sensor, it's hard to be used freely as a 26 megapixel sensor because it's not focusing as fast as a smaller sensor with lesser pixels. So the AF it's not as good on my Sony camera A7R3 as on Sony A7 III or on Sony A7C. So I'm really losing the AF like in the X-H2 part. Next, another problem that the 40 megapixel sensor is bringing to the table is related to IBIS, to shutter speed and to ISO. So for pictures done from your hand, you really need to raise that shutter speed. So I'm really hating to do street photography with an f2.8 lens on my Sony camera when it's low light outside because I need to raise the shutter speed at least 1/1000 to get in sharp pictures not moved by my hand. So the ISO is very big and I have more noise. And I found out that no, you can't get rid of the noise as easy as you can get rid from a 26 megapixel sensor. Yes, the file is bigger and you can export it smaller, but it's not like that. You really need a good software to process it. And when you want to do even photography or you want to have lots of pictures, the 40 megapixel sensor will slow you down a lot in the post-processing part at the computer. But after experiencing the slowing down at the post-processing part, you will be also slowed down when you are shooting because you will think, stop taking so much pictures because you'll need to post-process those pictures and it will be hard for you. Of course, you don't need to be a machine gun, but at portrait photography, when you are photographing kids, you really need to use the continuous AF and with burst mode because the kids probably will blink and you will need more pictures to get the correct one. So you lose with a bigger sensor AF speed, you will be slowed down in post-processing indifferently of what computer you will have. You'll have to have bigger storage and so on and so on. So you will be really slowed down with an APS-C camera. So because in the end it's an APS-C camera, you will not get the latest quality from a medium format camera or from a full frame camera because it's also about the optics and the size of your camera. But let's say there are a specific niche that needs those 40 megapixels. Personally, I'm not in that niche. So this is taking me to the X-H2S part. So I was thinking, X-H2S, great AF speed, 26 megapixel sensor. 26 megapixel sensor with great AF speed. What more do you need? With great video specs, with great heat control and so on and all the goodies that you are having on the X-H2S camera. So from my point of view, X-H2S it is better from all these points because if you aren't in that specific niche that needs the 40 megapixels, the X-H2S it's also a photographer camera. X-H2S it's also a photographer camera, but with lots of video specs and with better AF and with better control of your raw files in post-processing. So my advice is that if you are between X-H2S and X-H2, you can get any camera that you want. You will not be wrong with either cameras. Both cameras are very capable also on the photography side, but also on the videography side. But if you want the best package that will offer you the most advantages and the most features and the most benefits, from my long experience in using different cameras and being a Fujifilm fan, I am recommending get X-H2S because 26 megapixels are plenty of megapixels. The sharpness in real world use, it will not be an advantage of X-H2 because how I've said, you need to raise the shutter, you need to raise the ISO, you need to pay attention and you'll be slowed down when you are shooting but also in the post-processing part. So the winning of the resolution on the long term is not gonna be what you are imagining And this is my advice from my experience, because again, yes, I am loving the Sony A7 RC image quality. It is the best, and I like to shoot black and white. For me, color is not so important. I like to shoot black and white. So I'm not bothered by the Sony A7 RC colors. And I also can get Fujifilm colors on Sony A7 RC because I have cobalt profiles, and I've made a video about these cobalt profiles. So I can control the color, and also I like to shoot black and white on my Sony A7 RC camera. But in the end, I'm not putting my hand on this camera because it's not about how the camera looks, how the camera is inspiring me. No, the main problem in the end, I feel it's regarding to the size of the sensor, that it's cumbersome to be used as freely as a smaller camera with a smaller sensor. So now, looking back, yes, I'm sorry that I didn't bought Sony A7C, and not for the flippy screen, and again, on the paper, Sony A7 RC, it may be best because it's having 2 SD cards, it's having 42 megapixel sensor, it's sharp, no AA filter, and so on. And yes, the image quality, it's the best. But on the long run, I feel it is cumbersome to be used, and the advantages that I get, they're so small. Disadvantages are felt just by me. My clients, my non-photographical clients, don't feel the difference. They don't feel it. I can bump the sharpness of a 26 megapixel sensor from Sony A7C or Sony A7 III, and so on. So in the end, for me, choosing a bigger sensor with lots of megapixels didn't work. Okay, I'm okay with the camera, I'm using the camera, but the 26 is the sweetest spot, and not just for post-processing, how I've said, but also for the AF. With Sony A7 III, I'm feeling I'm not able to focus as fast as I am able to focus with Sony A7C or Sony A7 III. And from the test shown online, X-H2 and X-H2S are a little below Sony A7 III. So this is why I feel the best choice, if you want to get a camera that you will not regret it, a photographer camera and also a videographer camera, it's to get X-H2S. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe now to my channel, because I'll post more content about photography gear, tips and tricks. Thank you, and I will talk to you soon. Bye bye.